first, my first question to you is, if I ever make a movie, can you be my cinematographer?
Let me see that script first. Let me see the script now.
Well, I mean, I want to talk about your story though, because I know you're from Louisville. We're close to the same age and everything. So I know you've come from the era where the biggest, black cinematographer at the time was probably like Ernest Dickinson or somebody. Like, what was your inspiration? Like, what led you to go down this road for this career?
Oh, all those guys. I mean, Malik, Ernest, AJ, Remy, Johnny Sim, Johnny, all those. I mean, they're all inspirations. That's my pedagogy around cinematography is formed by direct and indirect relationships with those folks I just mentioned. And so, no, I mean, that's the only reason why I'm even doing this. The only reason why I even know it's possible to even do this, not just as a black cinematographer, of course, but even as a cinematographer, because they were photographing work as a young black male I could relate to. And so when it was our duty to go see Spike Lee's films. And so when we went to see the films, it was I was acutely aware that the vision, the image making capacity of those films felt like things that I hadn't bear witness to before. And so I was always wondering, what is the cinematographer, what's the director of photography? And it was great to know that those names on the screen were men that look like men from my community. And so, those cats, they made it possible. I'm only here because of them, And
do you remember, like, which film or TV or something that where you first, like, really grasped that there was somebody at the helm of the camera, like, making these images, instead of just watching it as a viewer? Like, when did it open up to you, like, wow, who is this guy that's doing this? You remember, like, a film that...
Yeah, I mean, there were several, but I mean, I think School Days was probably the first film where I didn't understand what was happening with my body as I watched the film. Like, it was the first time that I said to myself, like, something's different. I'm seeing something different. And because I'm seeing something different, I'm feeling something different.
Yeah.
And that carried on to, I think, School Days had its own version of that in my life, and then Mo Better Blues really cracked it open for me, where I just felt like, wow, that's black folk getting together in one room, organizing themselves around a particular idea in order to, and using images as a way to communicate that idea in a really special, free way. I think. And then, then I went to college, and then I saw the work of Haile Grima's work, and then that sort of opened up a whole other door, and a whole other door in my mind about what film is. But yeah, School Days is probably the first film.
You went to college for cinematography?
I didn't. I just went to college just to go to college, because I had to go to college. I mean, I had to get out the house and go to school. But and when I got to Howard, I wasn't quite clear that's what I wanted to do, and that came way later, many years later, after finishing undergrad and kind of finishing grad school, is when I realized that, all right, let me try this out. But something I've always respected cinematography. Once I got to school, I realized that it had its own special place in the filmmaking process, and that I needed to pay really close attention to what people were doing. And so.
What was your...
Louise. I am Louise.
What is that? Is that a new symbol? I can't tell. Dr. Banks?
Camera that was like your experimental tool when you started just shooting stuff, like what was...
I mean, discovering the Canon Scopic and the Bolex were total realizations of what the process could be, because then they were small, they were compact. You put it in places where you couldn't put cameras for. You could use the camera in a way that the resonance of the image was similar to the films that you respected, but you also put the camera in places that were reflection of our generational sensibility on how films could be shot. And we all had Malik in our head when we had AJ, Malik, and Ernest in our head when we were in school. So we were all trying to figure out ways to get our images closer to what they were creating, really important for us, as a way to sort of pay homage and also really challenge ourselves to do better. But yeah, I would say the Canon Scopic and the Bolex. That's the beginning of the end.
You've done some amazing projects. I think the first time I took notice to you was Mother of George, and Selma were great, but Arrival, how does the scope of your job change depending on like the film? I mean, you didn't have as broad a landscape to do in Selma with some of the shots. I mean,
Right.
how does it change when you have something like Arrival?
It's it's very different in terms of genre, which has its own like, if you shackle yourself to genre, obviously that sort of determines the approach. But at the core of the filmmaking of the process for me, at the core of it is just being truthful and honest to the material, and so. In that way, it hasn't changed, and the scope of the project in terms of budgets, et cetera, that's changed. But how we make the film doesn't change, because the projects get bigger doesn't mean I'm gonna bring 10 more people into the fold. It just means that the thing that I really understand and the thing that not understand, I'm trying to understand the thing that I'm working on as an image maker, it just gives me more time, a little bit more time, and a few more hands to help sort of sculpt and craft the moment that I would do it on if I was shooting just a $500,000 film. And then, working with somebody like Denis, that I think we have very, very, very similar taste in the films we like, the films we want to make, and that just enhances the process. So in that sense, it just, nothing, I mean, I still feel like I'm making films with my friends, and when I make films with my friends, I'm free, and so I just I don't want to arrest that. I don't want that to go away, and so for me, it's just I'm picking projects that will continue to allow me to do that.
Yeah, I know you have the Han Solo movie coming up, and everybody's kind of excited about that, and they announced Donald Glover. I mean, can't wait to see you.
Right.
I mean, anything where you have space and everything, just seems like as a cinematographer, you get to do like a lot more with the images. Another question I have, curiously, is drones. Like 10, 15 years ago, they were nowhere in people's minds, and if you had a film and had to use some aerial shots, your budget was shooting way up.
Right.
In the age of like drones and stuff, is that something now that cinematographers need to practice as a tool and be able to utilize? Or
I think drones is drones are one particular tool, but I think what we're finding is that the tools that made the films we like, the films that sort of like propelled us into making films that had all that had the sort of scale to them that seemed sort of unachievable to us as independent young filmmakers. Those things that just seem totally inaccessible to us are accessible to us now. So, but I think ultimately it's about how we use them that is where I think the real challenge comes. It's like, are we doing aerial shots because we're mimicking things that we've seen before, or are we using it in a special way? Are we using it to communicate a real unique idea? Is it an extension of our own unique voice as an image maker? So I think what we have to do is create a process where we demystify the tools early on and really connect to who we are as storytellers. I think that's the hardest thing to crack. The tools are like, they give you a manual. You know what I mean? They give you a manual on how to use the tools so that you can demystify it really quick. The part that's hard to demystify is who are you and where's your personal resonance in the stories that you're telling. So if a drone can help you do that, then more power to you. Use it, and I'm excited to sort of bear witness to how you use that, as long as it's anchored in your own self-discovery and your own accent as an image maker, as a filmmaker, as a storyteller.
Now, when I So, and then it's a long question, so I'm sorry.
Mm.
But, all right, so I know there's probably like cinematography Bibles and everything, but if you could just give like 3 rules or 3 suggestions that a young cinematographer should really focus on when making their next project, wherever they are around the world looking at this interview, what were 3 things you would say that they should probably focus on when trying to compose these images?
I don't know if I have 3. I have 1.
Okay.
I have 1, and I think it mirrors the last question. And I think the only advice I can offer to any filmmaker, image maker, artist is that having knowledge of self, knowing who you are and where you come from, is the most important tool you have. It's more important than the camera. It's more important than the script. It's more important than the sound design. It's more important than the editing, because all of those elements are informed by your accent. So before you invest in the camera, before you invest in writing the script, ask yourself real serious questions about who you are and the stories that you want to tell. If you don't see yourself in the story, if the story is not a reflection of a world that you want to create, it's probably not a story worth telling. That's just me. That's just my own bias in terms of why I feel like filmmaking is an important art form, why it's an important expression, because it gives us another ability, like music, like painting, like sculpture, to shroud and give the world an interpretation of the world, the future, the world, an imagination of a world that we want. And so I think it's, I think knowing who you are, where you come from, is the most important thing. And before you go write Arrival, tell a story about your grandmother, tell a story about your father, tell a story about your ancestors. Those are the stories we tell first. And then films like Arrival have a different meaning. You can bring more purpose to those films because you connect. For me, as I was making Arrival with Denis, I was thinking about my children. I was thinking about the mortality of my children. I was thinking about my own mortality. You know what I mean? And then when I was thinking about those things, I was concerned about Denis' children. I was concerned about Denis' children's mortality. And so those things don't come. You have to live life. You have to be seasoned in life in order to, I think, come to a realization of those things in your art form. And I think the way you become seasoned in your art form, the way you come partially realized, not fully realized, partially realized in your art form, is when you are honest with who you are and you are relentless with your own accent and your own vision in your art, in your storytelling, art making process. And so, yeah, I think that's what I would offer.
Thanks for asking, man. It's a great movie. I mean, the cinematography is definitely way above the bar.
Oh,
I
great,
really
man.
enjoyed it. So, congratulations.
Oh,
man.
thank you.
Keep on watching, man. You just keep on shooting.
I appreciate it, man.
All right,
All right, brother. Thank you.